Okay, Jeff.
Adrenaline.
Let's talk about adrenaline.
All over again, let's talk about it?
Let's talk all over again, seeing as we were interrupted by some lawnmowers. So we were at Back to Basics this weekend. Adrenaline was a big topic. Chad Macon talked about it a ton, and he was differentiating between adrenalized behavior and what did he?
And energy. I mean, you can have a dog. You can say, "Oh no, my dog's high energy." It's like, well, I got some high energy dogs too, but their adrenaline level is down really low.
Well, I think we both try and make sure that dogs that both our personal dogs and dogs we're training have on and off switches.
Correct.
So there's appropriate times where you can be in an excited or
right.
intense state, but you also need to be able to turn that switch and have a dog come inside, lay down, relax, not jump on people, not go bananas, not have this kind of
right.
super excessive
right.
kind of thing going on.
And a great example of this is something that we've always talked about. We just never put a label on it. For instance, we're big advocates of teaching calming behaviors, such as down stays and the place command.
Long durations.
Long durations, hours sometimes.
Right.
Now, you can have somebody that has a high energy dog, highly adrenalized dog, and someone says to them, "Oh, it needs more exercise." So you say to yourself, "Great, I'm going to take it out in the backyard and I'm going to play ball for 1 hour non-stop."
Yeah.
Now, that dog's probably going to come into the house, and as our clients always tell us, it still is it's still bouncing.
Right.
Because all you did was you're actually building up its adrenaline. You actually are training it to stay in a high level of adrenalized state. Instead, you need to actually teach it a calming behavior. Now, you have this dog that you've kept in a high adrenalized state, outside playing ball. It comes into your house. It suffers from separation anxiety. It already runs around your house like it was an obstacle course. It lunges at your kids. It barks too much. That 1 hour outside actually, if anything, will increase those bad behaviors.
Well, he's just practicing more intensity. He's not practicing anything else, any contrast to that, any calming stuff
right.
like that. So you've just taught your dog, you can behave like this and you can behave like this, but there's never, you can behave like
right.
this. Right? So.
The best thing you can do is as we see, probably the #1 critique I get on my photos is dogs in place in my gallery. Yeah, the #1 critique I get is I've got all these photos of dogs that used to have separation anxiety, dog aggression, dog-human aggression, in resource guarding, in those same things, doing nothing. And the #1 comment is, "Wow, those dogs look bored." And now it's like, wow, no, it's like, no, they're not bored at all. They're actually incredibly calm in a non-adrenalized state. Right. Because you can have a dog in place for an hour, but if it's like always looking for something, that's not, to me, that's not training.
Right.
And again, we have to separate. We're not talking about agility dogs.
Right.
We're not talking about search and rescue dogs. We're not talking about fly ball dogs or dock diving dogs when they're doing those activities.
Right.
We're talking about family dogs in your family. And if you want to have a successful dynamic in your family, where your dog can be included, not excluded, you really need to get a handle on that and really practice some of these calming techniques, such as long downstays and long your place commands.
Right. Well, I think both of us find, and one of the reasons we kind of shy away from a lot of treat-based rewards and a lot of excessive affectionate physical interactions, because when the dog's in a more adrenalized state, or even just in a kind of hyper-intense state, even if it's not full-blown adrenaline, just even at some lower levels, it's very hard for the dog to focus. It's very hard for the dog to listen and learn. The dogs they're competing with all this frenzy in their mind, and you're saying, "I need you to down." Meanwhile, the dog's like this. Right. So I think you're setting the dogs up for a much bigger struggle to comply with what you're asking for. If I bring out a treat, say I'm working with the dog, and and he's maybe a little bit kind of mildly low level, and I was like, let me see if I can just get him a little more interested. Bring out a treat, and it never found me, because I like to experiment. I'm not closed-minded. I'm not saying I won't use this. Right. I'll bring something out. Next thing I know, the dog's like this, and he's only looking at my hands, and all the stuff that we had going on is kind of out the window. So I go, okay, well, the treat thing is at least in my perspective, it's not, or from my perspective, it's not working for me. It's not getting what I want out of a dog, which is I want a dog in the house that can chill out, relax with their owner, and not be doing, because the dogs that come to us usually aren't just dogs that need to learn sit or down. They're dogs that have got behavior problems, and we're using those tools to kind of help get the dog into a different mindset.
Right. When we leave dogs, we put them in crates, and we don't leave them with chew toys. Why? Because they're doing nothing. They're so mentally and physically exhausted, and we don't run our dogs all day long. We're not talking, 3 hours on the treadmill. We're talking about structured walk, 2 45-minute-a-day structured walks. We're talking about running them through their obedience commands, even just for 10 or 15 minutes, a couple times a day. Your structured walks. So a little bit of outdoor socialization. Obviously, a couple of other things mixed in between. And believe it or not, they're fine.
Yeah.
They're fine, but
especially if you pattern them with that. If that becomes their pattern, that this is what we do. We have this, the beginning of our day, we've got all this activity, and we do this, and then we go into a not shutting down, but a relaxing kind of
recharging.
Yeah,
recharging.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So that becomes the habit rather than the habit being that we bounce constantly. Bounce, 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 intense, intense, that becomes a habit just as much as anything else.
Oh, right? It does.
So we're really cultivating habits, different mindsets, but we want those mindsets to become habits. It's a habitual thing. I want a dog to be able to turn off. I want a dog to be able to relax and not need, I don't want a dog at my feet the whole time like this.
Right.
I'm trying to read a book.
Or when you have to get up to go to the bathroom, that one or all dogs like jump up like, oh my gosh, it's time to go. Right. I want to be able to get up to go to the bathroom and my dogs look at me like, yep, there goes my owner going to the bathroom or going to the kitchen. Right. We don't need our dogs to follow us around constantly.
Right. Every movement doesn't indicate that it's
a break of command.
Yeah. Right. Both of us working with dog aggression stuff or human aggression or resource guarding, we know that whenever a dog, especially if you're going to have a dog-on-dog stuff,
right.
I mean, adrenaline's really the enemy right there, because
Correct.
you're going to have a dog much more apt to make poor choices and much more apt to make the other dogs uncomfortable about his behavior, because
Correct.
an adrenalized dog is gonna freak everybody out, and he's not going to be making smart choices.
We did a pack walk this morning.
Yeah.
A gentleman stopped us with a little terrier and a pit bull, and the whole time we were talking, believe it or not, his aggressive pit bull, not because it's a pit bull, it just happens to be a dog that has aggression issues and it happens to be a pit bull, was actually, he's doing a great job keeping it in the sit state in front of our 8 dogs, but the terrier dog, who is not aggressive, was barking. Now, it's like he needs to, the problem will never be fixed until he gets a handle on the little dog.
Right.
Because that little dog, if anything, possibly is sort of like intensifying.
Keeping everything up.
Right.
Exactly. And he actually said that the little dog had been attacked by the pit. Now, a lot of people would assume, it's because the pit bull's aggressive and he's just going to go after a little dog. Most likely it's because the other dog is in a manic state and the pit bull is either correcting that manic state or disagreeing with that manic state, or they're both getting in this frenzy thing and redirecting on each other at like a doorbell or something like that, or passing through a doorway. So that's why the adrenaline is the enemy with a lot of dogs, whereas a lot of people see a small dog, he's just fun and it's a little hyper, but really that dog could have set that pit bull up for that fight or that bite, and if they would have had a handle on that little dog, they may never have seen any problem from that pit bull.
Right.
So you got to balance everybody in the household.
Yes, definitely. And people shouldn't get us wrong. We don't want lazy dogs, and that's not what we're talking about at all.
Right.
We have got dogs that we can, I've got dogs that will backpack for 10, 12 miles a day. I have dogs that will swim in the ocean for an hour. Yet all your agility dogs out there can still do your agility at peak performance. Actually, chances are your high-performing dog will actually probably be more of a peak performer if you learn how to control the adrenaline. It's not the concept, I hear this all the time, I rehabilitate agility dogs as well, and someone's like, my dog never calms down. I'm like, I know it doesn't. You've never trained it to calm down, because everything you've ever learned in dog training has been, my dog should love doing its sit, love doing its down, it should always have its eyes on me, it should always be like reading my body language at every moment of the day, it should be able to like turn on a dime if I just blink my right eye. It's like, well, that's all good, that's all wonderful, but guess what? When you're watching TV, you want your dog to do a whole lot of nothing.
You're going to get the same thing. You're going to train something else, right?
Exactly.
I told you a story just, I think it was yesterday, we were talking about flyball dogs.
Yes,
and Belle does,
wonderful story.
Belle does flyball, and of course I want Belle to be in a crazy, adrenalized state. When it's time to compete, I want her shaking, I want her in the state. But on my flyball team, I had a woman who's a really great flyball trainer, and she had two border collies. One that's exceptionally fast, one of the fastest dogs around. But the dog, in all the years of training, and the dog knows flyball inside and out, has never been able to get any points on the board because it's never been able to finish even one lap of a flyball race in an overall course. And so this had gone on for I don't know, a couple of years, and she'd been really, really obviously disappointed in having this incredibly fast dog that couldn't compete ever. Never. I mean, it's embarrassing. You know, here's this dog, and you're a great trainer, and your dog runs around every time. So if anybody understands flyball stuff, you've got the starting line, you've got 4 jumps, you've got a box, dog hits the box, gets the ball, comes back over all the jumps. If you go around any of the jumps, you're disqualified. Or not disqualified, you're penalized. You have to send them back over the jumps to finish the thing. I'll try and make this short and quick. Reality is she could never get the dog to ever even finish one race. I spent an hour and a half with the dog before race time, and all I did was spend time teaching it calming exercises. I put it on a prong collar. I took it over to where the dogs were racing, and I insisted on it ignoring the other dogs running by, put it in a down, and I insisted that it ignore the other dogs. It was frenzied and out of its mind for a good long time. What happens after an hour? It starts to decompress. It starts to go down, because all it's ever been taught is to be decompressed. And the reason why this is such a great story is because right after that, we had a race coming up, took the dog out, I told the owner what to do, I told her, in flyball, people got their dog on the line, and they're like, you ready to go, and the dog's like, ah! Just be quiet. Your dog's got so much juice, it doesn't need anything, let it go. When it's time, when the green light hits, let it go. She did. The dog got its first points ever in a flyball race and did 4 consecutive races perfectly without a mistake.
And all you did was teach. So you taught a flyball dog how to be calm, and it ended up doing better than it ever did.
I didn't do anything with flyball. I didn't walk it over the jumps. I didn't do any flyball training except teach it to calm down so it could think. That was the whole problem. Was it was so adrenalized, it couldn't focus on the task at hand. It was just explosive. So I think that that's a powerful lesson in how much training calming skills can massively improve your dog's state of mind and behavior. So, and I knew with Uma, you know, you made a funny joke yesterday when we were driving around. We were talking about her being a protection dog, and we were talking about adrenaline and on and off switches, and you were saying, yeah, Uma's been trained to jump out of windows like bad guys. And you're like, but I don't want her to jump out the window at just anybody walking by. I mean, and if you don't teach a dog to differentiate and have an on and off switch, you can have a dog that like, oh, there goes somebody running down the street. Boom, she's out the window. Of course, Uma doesn't do that, but that's a valuable distinction to make in the training.
People have to understand, just like there's different kind of trainers, you know, there's also dogs have roles at different times of day. So if a family out there is saying, you know, your dog always jumps, it's like, well, because, you know, I do work my dog in flyball, say. It's like, well, great, but I'm not a flyball jump, so get your dog off of me. It goes back to this whole thing about how we're not, you know, balancing the training.
Closing this one out, I would say that whereas a lot of trainers are focused on specialty things, and nothing against them, whether it's protection training or flyball or agility, which you have a lot of on the East Coast, what we tend to be doing different is that we're focused on balance. We're not focused so much on high performance stuff. We're focused on dogs being able to live and exist in a balanced state with their family, because who we work with are families. We're trying to keep dogs living included in their family life. So that's really what our focus is. And teaching calming skills and calming behaviors and keeping adrenaline in check is, I think, a big part of how come we're so successful.
You know, and it's the kind of thing where, you know, this conversation goes across all boards. Whether you're a pure positive trainer, a correction-based trainer, a balanced trainer, it really doesn't matter. And what I would ask, you know, especially a pure positive trainer, is listen. It's like if you're training down or you're training sit, and that dog is in a down and it is shaking with excitement, you have to ask yourself, would that be an appropriate behavior in somebody's home, having a dog in a down state shaking with excitement? So some people are so quick to say, geez, that dog looks bored. Well, if my bored-looking dog was on the agility floor, that probably wouldn't be a good thing, but I'm not training for agility. I want my dog, you know, as I look around right now, I see 5 dogs all looking bored, but they're relaxed. What else should these dogs be doing right now while we're doing video?
Bored is a human.
Bored is a human thing, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I think relaxation is far more what we're getting at.
And if you and I just popped up right now and say, hey, let's go for a walk, I bet you every dog would be like, I'm ready to do 10 miles.
Absolutely.
But right now they look like they don't want to move. That's what balanced training
On and off.
is.
We want to be able to have on and off switch.
Excellent.
So,
Excellent.
Nice. Okay.
Very good.
That's adrenaline.
Adrenaline.